happy Monday, everyone. All right, so this is probably going to be a fairly long walkthrough. All right, so just bear with me as we get through it, and I'll try to make it as quick as I possibly can. All right, and so essentially here we are. If you have been following and completing the stages of the process, all right, then you're in a place where you can start writing your diary this week. And so that's the plan, is to get the diary draft done this week. All right, and it will occupy the vast majority of our time as we seek to do that. So if you're not quite there, then you need to get caught up on the other parts, or some of these things are not going to make a lot of sense to you, and you're not going to have had the chance to develop some of the elements that need to be inserted into this diary. All right. So please do this as intended and follow the steps. Okay. That being said, all right, no matter what stage of the process you're in, I think it is muy importante that you continue to use last year's edition for Wisdom Writers as a model, as an example for how to write these diary entries, not only in terms of format, but also in terms of content. All right. So this should be something that you go back and visit frequently. Okie dokie. All right. So with that, back to this. Okay, so let's start thinking about writing the diary here. I think one of the first things that's really important is we understand that we have to write in a reflective mode here. All right, and if you're not sure what reflect means, so when we reflect, we think deeply or carefully about something. We look back at a past experience thoughtfully. All right, and so that is how you should be approaching this. All right, and I think what's important is this is about the experience. It's about your thinking about the experience. It's not about telling the story. It's looking back on the experience as the whole project is intended. All right, to try to gain from it, or to discover from it some wisdom, either about yourself and or the world. All right, and then it's about capturing that wisdom in words, and that's why we're writing the diary. Importantly, you are the audience. Okay, we are not the target audience. Okay, you already know the story, you know the details, you have an intimate relationship with this experience. All right, it is your experience. Okay, and so I'm telling you that to remind you that you're not just simply relating the story here. Okay, you are thinking about the story, and that's what you're sharing in your diary entry. Okay, but I think what you need to also know is that we will read this. Okay, and because we will read this, because a lot of you, by design, all right, have selected personal topics, all right, I think it's important that you be mindful of how personal you get. All right, last year's kids obviously chose personal experiences too, and they knew that this year's group of kiddos would be reading this, so they had that in mind. So I guess what I'm trying to say there is just be careful about what you share and what you want others to know. Okie dokie. So the role of the anecdote, okay? So last Friday you had a chance to learn about anecdotes. This week you're going to put that learning to work, all right? And so um, if you go back and if you look at last year's edition, you will note that there's a date and then there's an anecdote and then there's the diary entry. Okay, that serves two purposes. One is for the outside reader; it does give us a little bit of context about what's going on. Okay, the second is it steers you away from spending time in the diary entry on telling the story, instead freeing it up for you to reflect on what happened. Okay, um, to help kind of keep you in anecdote mode, we are going to limit you to 50-word max for your introductory anecdotes, which will follow your date, which set up the diary entry. All right, and if you look back at last year's, you'll note that many were well under that. All right, and some were quite short. All right, very short. Okay, and so again, the idea there is that you just kind of set the stage by providing some context. Okay, into the diary entry. Okay, so this follows the anecdote, as you will see in last year's example as well. And to help set the stage and get you into kind of diary mode, we would like you to begin with Dear Diary. All right, and remember, you're talking to yourself here. Okay, and so your diary really is kind of like your conscience. Okay, and so you're just kind of exploring the event of the day, all right, that you set up in your anecdote, and you're just trying to kind of hash that out and make sense of it in your own mind. All right, and again, it's in a kind of reflective narrative voice. Go back and look at the voices from last year's editions. I know I keep harping on the going back, but the idea was to have a great model or example for you guys this year. something which last year's kids didn't have. So we're pleased and proud that we have that to be able to provide to you that example and model this year. So please use it as intended. Okay. Um, One thing to consider as you write your diary entries is this is based on a true story or true experience, and so it's okay for you to take some artistic license here and embellish a little bit, all right, for narrative effect. In fact, we encourage it. Okay, so we're not the target audience, but we're readers, and we'd like to enjoy this. Okay, and so. And as you're looking back on this, you're not going to remember exactly everything. As long as it fits and as long as it's not too far fetched, okay, I think you do definitely have some license here to be a little creative, to be artistic, all right? And if that means you have to embellish a little bit, embellish a little bit, all right? It's what we do, okay? And now, really quickly, for the diary entry requirements. Um, Here they are, but I'm going to actually shift over to here and go over them in the actual diary that you're going, oops, in the diary that you're going to write, okay? And so this is where you're going to start drafting your diary, all right? And you're going to do all the entries here, whether it's 3 or 5 or however many you decided during last week's diary or diary planning process that we did. Okay, so for each entry, please provide a date. Okay, um, provide an anecdote to create context for the entry. So remember the date and then the anecdote. All right, and remember there's a 50-word maximum there. Again, go back and look at last year's edition for model. All right, please begin with your diary. And then you're going to write the diary entry in a reflective narrative voice. Okay. Remember, these are your private thoughts. Okay, some thoughts that we were never intended to have access to, but we do. All right, and so please keep that in mind as you write it. Okay, I'd like to continue to use parenthesis, and I think this is a great place to use this. All right, because I think it invites kind of that narrative, reflective piece where we're adding commentary. All right, so please continue to use that either with commas, dashes, or parentheses. Okay, hopefully that's pretty straightforward what I'm talking about there. And then be careful here. Last year, a couple of kids mistook what I intended here for the diary itself, not the date, not the anecdote, but for the diary itself, for all of your diary entries combined, okay, we're looking for you to get to 300 to 500 words, not for each entry. Last year, kids thought I meant some kids, a few who didn't listen, but it's all good. It's what happens. All right. Thought I meant 300 to 500 words for each entry. That's unreasonable. All right. And so it's 300 to 500 words total combined. Okay. So please note this direction. It will save you a lot of work and a lot of time because if you end up writing 300 to 500 words for each entry for 5 entries, that is unreasonable, and that's just going to be a lot of unnecessary work for you. So please pay attention to that. And then remember, when we see your entries, they should be organized and presented chronologically, which means they're time sequential. Okay. Uh, Finally, this is to help you remember your focus and purpose. And I think this is really important. Okay. So please don't leave out this step. Okay. What's your universal theme? Remember, my example was loss. Okay. So what is your universal theme that you're exploring throughout this whole thing? Okay. Um, and then your thesis statement. This should be at the end of your introduction that you wrote last week. This is a reminder. Is your "I am human" statement. Mine was because I've experienced loss. I am human. All right. Now your theme statement, okay, is something that we just barely brushed on last week, and that was done intentionally. Okay, this is likely to change. I'm hoping that last week's diary planning process, where we had to say this is what I want people to understand, is helping you arrive at a better understanding of what truth is going to be revealed in your diary, and then this will be your ultimate final sentence of the entire project at the end of your conclusion. Okay, and so if you have it in mind, at least rough it out here. All right, if I were to throw mine down there right now for my theme statement, I would say something probably along the lines of sometimes when we lose, we actually gain. All right. I would like it to be better than that, but that's just what I have in mind right now, and that's what I want people to understand from doing my entire diary. Is that because of the loss that I experienced from my parents' divorce, as life went on, as I look back at those experiences, I now realize I gained something from that. And so that's the wisdom that I'm wanting to share with the world. All right. And that's the role of the theme statement here. Finally, after all of that, please begin your diary here. All right. Now, importantly, I only want you to spend 20 minutes, no more than 20 minutes a day on this, okay? The creative process, I think, is a taxing process, all right? And so if you give it an honest 20, that's all I want out of you each day. Of course, you can do a little bit more, all right? But I would rather you just put in a solid 20 minutes, set the timer on your phone, look at the clock, do something, and then just get as far as you get, all right? You're going to basically have class time this entire week, all right, to get your draft of your diary done, okay? So that is kind of the goal. Hopefully this is all going to kind of fit together or starting to fit together for you. Remember, this is just a draft, and then I will remember you got the bigger picture here too. All right. This is always about the writer in my class. It's first, and then it's about the writing. All right. The writing will end up being what it's going to be. My goal is that you just end up becoming a little better writer, all right, by the time you're done with this, okay? And if you just engage in the process and have that mindset, I believe that will happen. Okay, so I'm going to cut this short now because I'm sure it's way too long. Anyway, let's get started with this week. And if you need help, as always, reach out, please. Okay, all right, peace out, my friends.